Welcome, everybody, to today's episode of the Co-Living Code Show. And today I get to speak with David Chun, who is the co-founder of Cohaus in Los Angeles, California. And he has a architecture background, which is really cool, and it's a fun discussion. And he's very modest on his bio, so I am going to elaborate a bit. He has a bachelor's in architecture from UC Berkeley and a master's in architecture from Harvard. So he's definitely brilliant when it comes to the best way to use space, design space, especially when it comes to co-living. Cohaus provides long-term housing solutions in urban areas, creating density efficiency by adaptively reusing oversized and obsolete single-family homes. What I found most interesting about this conversation with David was how they are gutting out these huge homes in Los Angeles and completely repurposing the use of them and building specifically for co-living. I mean, these guys are going all in. It's not just let's design it and then if it doesn't work out as co-living, revert back to a single family home. No, these guys are full force going all the way in, which is super exciting to hear and listen to, and just some really cool uses of space that we talk about, and privacy, which comes up a lot in co-living. So let's launch right into the episode. Hello, everybody. Christine here with another weekly episode of the Co-Living Code Show. And today I have David with Cohaus. And I just teased him because I said I took a little liberty with his bio that we did the intro with before this interview, because he didn't include that he actually has a bachelor's in architecture from Berkeley and a master's in architecture from Harvard. So this is going to be a fun conversation because he's coming more from the aspect of architecture and design and how to apply that to co-living successfully, but he still has the background in real estate and property, taking homes, repurposing them, flipping, building, and they have a dream team. We'll talk more about the team they've built there in Los Angeles to do the work they're doing with Cohaus. And again, it's going to be really fun because it's from an architecture standpoint versus an operator. Well, let's start there, David. First, thank you for coming on the show this week.
Thank you. I'm a big fan. I'm glad to be here.
Yay. So talk about that. Tell us, maybe if you take us back, the trajectory in you getting into the world of co-living in Los Angeles.
Yeah. So I have an architecture background and I have an architectural practice. Yeah, I did start getting into real estate development a little over 10 years ago, flipping homes actually, and it was really rewarding. So that sort of quickly evolved into multifamily and now co-living. So we were sort of looking at areas near universities, and we obviously noticed this big phenomenon of student housing, and we visited a lot of properties and saw what other developers were doing, and that's how we started. Is like seeing this model, student housing model, and the dire sort of housing needs here. That you could see that this could certainly apply to people after school. And because it just made financial sense to make things a little bit more affordable, by sort of being really efficient and sharing spaces. So that's how we sort of got into the co-living, not by any sort of like research and looking into what other people are doing, but we just saw sort of a need in the market and an opportunity in the market, and that's we thought we invented co-living. And then and then when we looked into it, it was like, wow, this is like ubiquitous. I mean, it's all over the place, and then we were really, really excited and inspired by that. So and here we are today.
And so, okay, and I know Cohaus just started 7 months ago, and I know you guys are purchasing the homes and you're taking these large single family homes that, like we said in the intro, are really becoming obsolete, right? And so, especially in Los Angeles, is that 7 months ago from when you guys purchased your first home?
We opened in October, I think, our first house, but we've been, working on this probably since 2016, maybe 2015. Initially, when we started, we had tried to work with an investor who had sort of larger plans, and then we designed this big ground up thing, and everything kind of fell through. And then we sort of had to start things, and so we got another team together, and we started this venture. And what we were targeting basically our financial means were limited. So what we decided to do was really sort of see the market and see what some of the underperforming opportunities were for this kind of co-living model. And what we found was in the less affluent, more dense communities, there were a lot of like really super oversized homes that really didn't make sense in such a dense environment. And it's not, let's say, in Los Angeles terms, it's not Santa Monica or Beverly Hills. It's not in those neighborhoods. Maybe a 5,000-6,000 home would make sense, but in sort of, I guess, lesser affluent areas, a 6,000 square foot home for a single family really doesn't make much sense. So, the market sort of also says that because the price per square foot is very, very low. So that was a real opportunity in our mind because you can get the volume of space. And so like our first home actually was a 3,000 square foot home. So we went in there, and obviously the price per square foot was relatively low because of the size. And so we took advantage of the envelope of the house, and we basically gutted out and sort of created a co-living house. And yeah.
No, and so it's funny. Me and David were just having an amazing conversation like a week ago, and I begged him to come on the show. I'm like, you have to come on the show and talk about this because nobody's talked about this particular. Sometimes you hear of privacy issues, so that's something that comes up all the time. Hey, when you're co-living, how does the privacy work? Hey, if I'm bringing home a date, like it's awkward to come in through the main corridor and everybody's in the living room and everybody sees it. Like, how do you guys get around that? And these have been questions been asked multiple times to me. And David was just explaining the way that they've designed, like he just explained, they gut out the entire interior. And then I would love for you to explain, how you guys redesigned the interior to make it friendly for adults that are living together.
Yeah, I think, obviously from an architecture perspective, it is about the design of the space. I see, like, for instance, what we do as an example, like when you look at a traditional typical house, you enter into a living room, and then maybe a dining room and a kitchen, and then it leads you to the bedrooms. So there's sort of a very sequential sort of procession as you move from the entrance to sort of your bedroom. So that really is for a single family. It's meant for a single family. It's designed for a single family. But when it comes to co-living, and when you're designing for all these multiple tenants, you have to have different priorities, and that certainly influences how a space should be laid out in order to accommodate this type of living. So as far as privacy is essential, because you have all these people living together. And so what we do is that we sort of design the space where when you first enter, you don't enter into a public space like a living room. You enter into sort of a vestibule that leads you into a passageway. So this sort of vestibule passageway is sort of the main spine that really is the heart of our co-living model, because once you enter, this passageway would lead you directly to your bedrooms first. So that way, when you have, let's say, like you say, when you're on a date and you want that privacy, and you want to access your private space, and not have to go through, your living room and deal with some goofy roommates that you don't want to deal with, that's possible. And at the same time, the common areas are very large and central, which gives easy access. And this kind of large openness sort of gives you a lot of relief from like the confines of your private room. At least you have some space to kick your legs up on the table. And furthermore, within this passageway, we have a lot of relief spaces that are sort of smaller than the main space, and maybe you don't want to be in your private space. That there's this sort of semi-public, semi-private space. So we would have like in the passageway, you would have like small reading rooms, or a small a TV room, or a smaller kitchenette that's sort of maybe further away from the main kitchen. So this sort of network that's surrounded by this passageway is what we feel makes for the proper layout of for co-living.
That is amazing. No, I love that. And do you guys feel like the space that's used the most, where you see people congregating, is that typically the kitchen, the big kitchen?
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
it is the kitchen. I mean, pre-modern homes, you have the kitchen that's really tucked away, and because they used to have like servants and stuff. So as the homes become modernized, like the kitchen really started becoming the center of the house, because it's really the social space, and there's like you can do cooking and eating. It's such a social event, the center sort of social point, and that's especially important in co-living. And that's why we really sort of focus our sort of main common area, shared space, to be the kitchen dining space, because that is not only our largest space, it's the central space, and it also sort of connects to usually like an outdoor lounge deck porch, because this is where all the chance meetings happen, right? This is where people cook together, eat together. It's a very, very sort of public space. It's a very a community space, in the most ideal sense of co-living. It's been really successful, I feel. I mean, like the first house was a total experiment, and everybody was scared, because like, okay, if we really go for it, like we transform this house completely to co-living, it's going to be really hard to go back. Like you can't like turn this back into a normal house again and sell it, just in case we fail. But everybody believed in it, our team, and we're just like, let's go for it, and we just went for it, and it was just like people just loved it, and that's what led to our second home, and that's what's leading, sort of keeping us going, because it's so apparent that this model is working.
No, and you guys are doing it right, because I think a lot of, and we had talked about this, the investors were kind of like, and the builders and the real estate developers, and especially in the States, were dipping their toes into co-living. Okay, so they were building buildings, even multi-unit buildings, that they knew they were constructing them in a way that's pretty much just multi-family apartment complexes. It's not really co-living. The
Right.
design wasn't any different. And they would tell me, well, Christine, we're worried because if co-living is a fad, this is just last year, they were saying this, then we could just switch it really easily back, right? Then it's super easy. And that's not, I love that you guys went all in. And that success shows. I mean, you guys are literally purchasing your third house in Los
Yep.
Angeles
Yep.
in under a year. That's
Yeah.
insane. And then let's talk
Yeah.
about the numbers. You guys have how many residents in each home, or how many bedrooms?
Actually, the first home, we actually have 9 bedrooms and 7 baths. And I mean, in that home, we basically eliminated the living room, and really just enlarged the kitchen and the dining space. We needed a little bit more relief from, we need one more space, and we need to provide something else. So we actually converted our smaller room into a TV room, which everybody was thrilled about. Um, and then the second home, believe it or not, we have 15 bedrooms and 15 bathrooms. Um, and the third that we're working on has 13 bedrooms and 13 baths. So what was sort of surprising is that the 15 this our second house was a lot more sort of successful in the sense of like people's sense of the social aspect of the house. It's a lot more sort of energized, and perhaps it's because of that sort of critical mass, because we thought maybe 15 was like, oh man, that's a lot of people, but in fact, I mean, it's really sort of energized the social component of the house, and yeah, it's been really interesting to see
And then
that.
is it always one person per bedroom?
Yeah, it's everything is single occupancy. I know that there are there's so many variety of how people interpret co-living. For us, it's it's a single occupant. It's every bedroom has its own bathroom, except for our first house. But from here on out, our second house has a bathroom for every bedroom. and it's really meant to be sort of an independent, sort of almost an apartment suite for individuals, and then they share a sort of common area. So I mean, the whole house, I feel, in a way, sort of works very much like a multifamily, in that they have shared space and they have very private space.
And each bathroom is en suite, right?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
yes, yes,
into the
yes,
bedroom. Are the
yes.
bedrooms regular size, a little
Yeah,
smaller? They're just regular
uh,
size bedrooms?
yeah. They're very regular size. They have enough space for a bed and a desk, and although I've seen some of the newer ground up buildings really are able to do a lot of built-ins to save space, um, which I think is interesting. But ours is very kind of a standard bedroom, window, and it's kind of relatively spacious. Um, but I wonder if we're sacrificing too much space. I don't know, because I see some of the newer ground ups out there, and they're really packing people in there. Um, so yeah, we'll see.
Even the occupant, yeah, and that's because depending on the demographic that talks to me, somebody over 40 years old says, "Oh my gosh, those micro suite apartments or rooms are tiny. I could never live in there." But then if you talk to somebody kind of like 20s and 30s, they're like, "We're never home.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we don't care. We don't need a lot of
right,
space." So it might
right.
be a generational thing, is what I'm
That's true.
hearing. Yeah, the people complaining about the size of the rooms aren't even wouldn't that they would never live in that size room.
Right.
So
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, for us, I feel like the demographics is from early 20s to late 40s. So the range is huge, and I think that's I mean, we really like that diversity, and I think it goes to show that this type of housing is a necessity, in such a, I mean, in such a market like Los Angeles or any other metropolitan city. It's there's really no solution in such a limited space, limited zoned urban areas like LA. It's impossible. And when people come to our co-living space and they see our product and they see the price, people are just ecstatic that this exists, and it just gives so much confidence to us about what we're doing. And obviously there's a market for it, but this is like, nobody's really building, as for sort of the starter, the more affordable, and the capital, I mean, in the lowercase a, affordable type of housing. It's so needed, and yeah, we feel like we're doing a good thing.
oh, without a doubt. So, and we didn't
Yeah.
talk about the areas that you're, because I know we have a lot of people from Los Angeles that listen to the show. Which three neighborhoods?
Oh, so we try to find. I mean, we try to find houses in the denser areas that has some proximity to commercial centers, have to have some walkability. So our first house is in Highland Park, which is very close to sort of the central Figueroa area, which also has a metro stop there. And then our second home is in Koreatown, which you'd be surprised these days that it's one of the densest areas in Los Angeles now. Lots happening there. And very central. It is walking distance to a cafe and a market, and and then our third project that's under construction. It's in West LA. We were hoping to get a house in West LA, and we found this opportunity near the old West Side Pavilion, which is off of Pico and Westwood. And that's been highly publicized with Google moving in there, I think, in a couple of years. So I think
Yeah,
that
and
everything
they're
changed.
repurposing them all, right?
Exactly, exactly. Like I said, I'm a big fan of your show, and I was listening to your guest who was talking about environmental sustainability of the co-living model, And I was just so fascinated by that talk because I mean that's exactly it. I mean it's talking about being efficient, utilizing, basically recycling existing buildings is really the most efficient way to create density, and especially in urban areas, in denser areas. So yeah, that was fantastic.
Oh, it must be. Are you talking about Penny Clark?
Yeah,
I think.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
PhD in co-living. See,
That's
now
right.
co-living is getting now it's an actual legitimate word finally.
Yeah, I know. It's great.
It's
It's really great.
exciting. And again, I think that's my favorite part personally of this show is that,
Mhm.
we get to have conversations from different directions, right? Not just the operators, not just the people living in the homes, but there's
Right,
just so
right.
many facets of this ecosystem. So it's kind of cool to
Yeah.
hear people's opinions. And just my last company, our spa, we had actually we didn't gut the entire interior out. We had
Mhm.
about 70%, I think, and then left 30 because we knew we can, okay, let's add a wall instead of tearing
Mhm.
everything down. Where can we repurpose things we tore down? And
Mhm.
it's a kind of a fun challenge, right? To
Yeah.
recycle and repurpose. And
Yeah, it is.
these buildings, there's built like, especially in America, these monster malls that
Yeah,
Amazon is like, the American mall is just kind of disappearing overnight practically.
that's
However,
right.
the structure is not just sitting
Yeah,
in a ghost town.
exactly.
And how do we
Exactly.
repurpose? So let's
Yeah.
talk about that. I know that you're a big advocate for looking for additional space, and whether that's a commercial space or like, how do you guys plan on not just using single family homes, but how do you also plan on expanding the model?
Yeah, so we've been talking to some other sort of developers and investors about sort of how to scale this up. And our first thought was, we were looking at some opportunities where there's some underperforming commercial buildings, like office buildings that are, like I don't know why they're just sitting there vacant, and they have so much square footage. And so we're sort of looking at that to sort of, hey, they have large floor plates, and they're probably like 5, 6 stories. There's such a mixed use opportunity, with doing ground floor retail for whatever it needs to be. I mean, we haven't really thought too much about that, but the upper floors, it's just a blank canvas, and you know, I, I think it would be just in line with sort of environmental sustainability. I mean, to be able to recycle a building of that scale and repurpose it for co-living, I think it's just a very exciting opportunity. So, I mean, we've looked at that, and obviously, we have to sort of take what the market can give us, and so we're looking at that, and we're also looking at just doing ground ups too, just like a lot of these big players are doing. And it's really and like you say, they haven't really completely committed to sort of going full co-living, and we're firm believers, and we're really pushing for that, and I'm really excited about the opportunity to be able to design a ground up multifamily, and see how we can sort of create these communities and not lose it because of the giant scale. And I know you had this talk with your previous guest, and I thought that was really interesting also, but about creating these sub communities. But it's really, I feel like he had said, it's uh, it's about creating these opportunities for these interactions and sub communities to happen, and I think design is really at the center of that. I've debated back and forth with some of my colleagues in academia, who really argue that architecture can't, determine behavior. I mean, that's such a like a topic in the architectural world. But when I heard Elvina Beck talk about her pod share, and how she talks about that co-living essentially is about removing walls, right? So that you instead of like being in a box, let's say you're forced to be in a box without walls, you're forced to be with people, like next to you without walls, and that's gonna affect your view. And that's really perhaps what co-living is about. And so that sort of idea is what I guess is my point in terms of how architecture, how spaces can affect behavior. And I think these spaces can be designed specifically to create and control scale of these sub communities, and can be designed so that these sub communities can thrive by design, and at the same time, the entire community can thrive sort of as one as well. But you can prioritize the sub communities to maintain the right scale for you to not lose that sense of community.
Hey, I think you're going in the right direction. I know you're having the internal debates with the academia because they always see things a certain way, but I think you're
Yeah.
thinking outside the box. I think you nailed it in that sense. I mean, I can't even count the amount of times that I would be in one part of the home and I would just one of my housemates, maybe they had a college friend in town for the week. They'd be in the living room having a conversation, and it's like I would jump in the conversation. But that would have never happened if I was living in my own apartment by
Oh yeah.
myself. It's happened
Right.
a million times, just
Right.
these happenstance, because like attracts like, right? So it's like your tribe brings in their tribe. And
Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
I love that. Zero complaints. And again, I think that's the world is got so disconnected. Now it's
Yeah.
trying to reconnect
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
that's the thing. It's not like you say, it's not about just the economics. People just want to be, in a community. I mean, who doesn't? I mean, I never felt a sense of community until I had children. You go into preschool and you meet, other parents, and then you like immediately connect because your common denominator is your children, and like that sense of community, I've never felt that. I mean, I don't know. I don't, maybe in college, but that sense of community and belonging is very powerful, and it's very like invigorating and healthy, and like you can almost create that, I think, I mean, maybe to a lesser degree, but some sense of community through co-living. And I think that's really important, and I think it gives a lot to the members, and I think people really are interested in that, and attracted to that. And I think that's part of the draw of co-living. It's not just the economics, so it's
Yeah.
really interesting.
And you have, again, you said you have a very wide range of age. What are some other, like, what type of work do they do? Most of the residents
Yeah.
there? Are they college, university students, or?
No, yeah, we don't have any students, but we have a lot of out-of-staters that have come, starting a new job. But just a lot of professionals, just doing their daily, grind. And we have like a COO of a tech company who decided to stay here just because I think he's kind of enjoys the community aspect. It's such a wide range, and everyone sort of has their diverse background, and that's what makes it interesting. It's the diversity, I think.
And are you guys running pretty, like, is it full occupancy, both homes?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
yeah,
What's
yeah.
the lease term?
So we do it 6 and 12 months only. So we try to do 3 months, and we basically limit it to 6 and 12. But
Okay,
most people do
no.
12. Yeah,
Oh,
most people do 12.
wow.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, yeah.
that's good. And then what's the average rent per month that you guys are charging now?
It's about 1250 to 1350, and
Okay,
yeah, and that's obviously includes all the
utilities. No, that's really good for Los
utilities, and
Angeles.
yeah, utilities, cleaning, and we have events.
What kind of events?
It really depends on the people, and it really sort of depends on the makeup of the people and what they're interested in, because it's really those events are opportunities for people to get to know each other. So like we had a mimosa Sunday brunch where we have a few bartenders, and they were
Nice.
making they had their own version of mimosas, and that was pretty fun because it was like late morning. No, no, no. It was actually early afternoon, and uh, yeah, a lot of champagne where it was flowing, so it was pretty fun. And we had like bowling night, taco truck. Um, yeah, it's been fun.
That's really cool. That's very California, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we have a lot of European listeners too.
yeah.
They're probably like, that's so LA. I love that.
Yeah,
And then David, let's talk about, so you have three other partners in this venture for
yeah,
Cohaus.
yeah.
And obviously you're passionate about the design and architecture. What are the roles that the other three play in the business?
So we have a general contractor, Scott, who has a lot of experience in obviously the construction field, and he's also an architect too. So we talk shop about design, and he's all about the execution. So that really fills a big void. We also have Cynthia, who is in the lending business. And so she sort of brings that sort of knowledge and expertise. And we also have Lyndon, who he has a finance background, but he also has a lot of experience in building businesses in various scales, and sort of dealing with institutional sort of funds. And we feel like that we put together a really good team, and yeah, we hope for good things.
No, and that's why I said at the beginning of the show that you guys have assembled this dream team for co-living, the architect, the general contractor, the finance guy, and the entrepreneur. Like, I don't think you're missing anybody.
Yeah,
That's
so it's
really,
been good.
really cool. And is there, and again, and it sounds like you're, and I've said it on a few shows, like it's just those days, especially in America, the days, the McMansions, like from the 90s and the 2000s, they're just building these massive houses that are truly becoming obsolete. Like it's just so much space.
Yeah.
So is there any other examples of like repurposed space, whether it's repurposing in the living or, like Google's doing with their offices in the mall? Is there any other examples of really cool, like repurposed space that you've seen recently?
It's been happening in downtown. They call it adaptive reuse of like industrial buildings that are turned into residential live workspaces,
Ooh.
loft spaces. Uh, so it makes sense. And the R1, which is the single family zone, is incredibly archaic. I mean, this idea of the goal of achieving home ownership. Obviously, it's still a goal, but that single family home is sort of like this model goal is just completely outdated. And I mean, I think it's was listening to something that it sort of started almost 100 years ago, that this model of single family homes, and it just doesn't make sense. And we need more density. We need to make room for people, because I think it's wrong for people to prevent that from happening. I mean, like in our Koreatown neighborhood, it's a single family area, and it's such a dense area, and you see like all these homes being turned into like preschools and
Oh yeah.
daycare, and it's just it it doesn't it doesn't it doesn't make sense. It's not relevant anymore, especially in these urban areas. So yeah, I'm a strong advocate for change.
Yes, no, we can tell. I can tell you're passionate about that, and I love
Yeah.
that. Especially it's been fun to have some Los Angeles people on lately on the
Yeah, right.
show. It's been really cool because co-living it's like got really popular in New York and Brooklyn.
Yeah,
It's almost like it's making its way west finally. Because I'm like, what's
yeah,
going on? What's going on here in LA?
yeah,
Because again, we have
yeah.
massive amount of people coming in. It's expensive, so it was just within due time. Now, finally.
Yeah, it's yeah. I'd like to see it moving faster, but definitely it's changing. So that's pretty exciting, and yeah, I'm glad to be in the space.
Yes. Well, perfect. My last question is, where do you see co-living going in the future?
I think that community, the sense of community, is really really important, and I think that it's obviously here to stay, and I'm sure it's going to generate all kinds of different co-living models, Maybe I mean, a lot of people talk about it should be for seniors. I'm sure various different kinds of communities will be created, and it's a necessity. I mean, it's so crowded, and affordability is such an issue. I mean, what's our other option? I mean, this is it. This is a main solution here in terms of making housing affordable. It's about sharing, and so I think it's going to be everywhere.
Perfect and very well said. David, thank you so much again. I
Yeah,
know I had to push a
thank
little
you.
bit to bring you on, but it was such a great conversation, and I'm sure
Such a
people
pleasure.
got tons out of that. So thank you.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you for your podcast. I love it.
Perfect. Thanks. Have a great day.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for checking out today's episode. If you want to learn more about co-living, you could check out my book on Amazon, The Co-Living Code. And of course, if you're looking for the perfect software to power your co-living concept, check out Kndrd.io, Kndrd.io. Thanks.